Here we go.
Good evening, Brimfield.
Hey, everybody.
How are we doing?
So welcome. We have a kind of a quick version of Brimfield Matters this evening with just 1 day prep. So we apologize if it's a little bit disjointed, but that's all we had to kind of get everything ready. And we're working folks, so it took us about 10 minutes, and here we are. So anyways, I think we should have a pretty good show, I think, and we apologize for being on a Tuesday night, but with the holiday, we thought it was probably better and let families be with their families tomorrow evening going into the holiday. So I guess what we can look at, any other words of wisdom before we start?
No, so I guess yes. The only words that I'll say are, seeing that it's a Tuesday and not a Wednesday, we do like to do things.
Don't hit the table.
I keep hitting
the table. Sorry about that.
Yep.
You already got yelled at.
So we like to do it on Wednesday because, in part, we have a day to cool off.
Right.
We're not cooled off tonight.
Not so much.
So we apologize for if it gets too much, but that's what happens.
All right. Amen. All right. So this is the agenda for yesterday evening, and I don't have it up on the big screen. Do you have it up on the big screen? Because it might make it a little bit easier for us to read. So obviously, at the very beginning, it opened up with the appointment, the appointment of the interim chief.
Now you're doing it.
Sorry, William Beaudry. So that went pretty smoothly. I think there was just maybe one omission. I think
one small omission.
It would have been nice had they actually mentioned the chief and kind of maybe got him involved in acknowledging that, and maybe even brought them both together with a handshake or something like that, to kind of make it more of a kind of an official passing and goodwill.
Yeah. And I'll say that it wasn't a small little omission. I think it was a glaring hole that was very unfortunate. And that's probably what was the worst part about this meeting for me was, to have the chief of police, who's been our chief for 19 years and 4 months, sitting at that board meeting, as he does every meeting. For those that don't attend, he is at every single board meeting.
Right.
I don't think I've ever seen him not attend.
No, and I've asked him that actually on many occasions, just asked him why he attends, and he basically said if there's any questions, he wants to be there and to either answer the questions or address any issues that might come up that might be related to his position or anything that he's involved with. So I don't think I've ever seen him not be there.
His thought process as a department head is that he should be there. That's part of his job with the public meetings that his bosses have. He wants to be there in the event that he can answer any questions for him.
Right.
Which shows the dedication and everything else. And it's this was very upsetting that this guy who's always there has been a 19-year. When earlier this year, Mr. Kelly had a moment where he acknowledged Mr. Leeming after he resigned for the second time.
Right.
And there was clapping, and it was one of those things. I think it's fairly obvious that Mr. Leeming and I don't see eye to eye. I don't want to speak for you. But,
no, we've definitely had some contention.
But it was something that. This was a man who has devoted time and energy, to some extent, to the town. And when he was acknowledged, I clapped for him.
Right.
And it's the respectful thing to do.
Agree.
And as the board that oversees the police chief, that has made it through 19 versions of the select board.
Right.
The least that this sitting select board could do, should have done, was to acknowledge his time.
Right. Well, even his presence.
Yes.
I mean, just saying, Chief, we really want to, because this is the last time he will be at one of these meetings in his official capacity. Right. And not to acknowledge that was, I don't know. I'm losing. I got to buy a thesaurus, because the reality is it just becomes like you're using the same repetitive words, unprofessional, it just non-managerial, I don't know what to call it. It was just an oversight, I think, is too slim. I think that's just not enough to call it that way. But I don't know.
They appointed an interim police chief, with the chief sitting there. There's no way that it could have been an oversight. I won't buy any version of that at all.
Right. Agree.
And so another part of this is that he's a police chief. He is a department head. He's there at every meeting. What does that say to all the other department heads? Right. These are your bosses, and
agree.
You work hard. You put in the extra effort. I'll probably say this a couple of times, but some of you may have seen that I was in a picture with the senior center for the Thanksgiving Day, or their Thanksgiving lunch. Right. I will say that for 2 weeks, I think, before that event happened, Eva, the senior center director, was cooking stuff and freezing it, and then she handmade, I believe it was handmade, 20 apple pies. And by handmade, not only was it put together by hand, but the crusts were handmade.
Right.
She didn't even buy crusts. 20 of these. She didn't do that on company time.
Right.
She did that on her own time, because she loves the seniors. She loves doing all this. The chief, I don't know if he counted these hours as work hours, but I'm sure that,
I think he does.
He should. He should, and Eva should as well. But
especially in the last year or so, because he's been asked to do police duties, kick you out, or at least keep you tame, and so there've been a few things like that.
That could be a full-time job.
that could be. All right, and so I don't know. Maybe we beat that pretty down, I guess. I mean, there's more to say, and I guess we can kind of. I think we can at least mention, if anybody, when that video becomes available on demand, I think after the adjournment, just stay on, because I do think that there was a nice warm acknowledgement and recognition
from the crowd
that was there for the chief. And I would say that just I'm hoping that doesn't get it edited out. It shouldn't, but it was there, and that was actually I thought that was gracious, and I thought that was good, and I think the chief appreciated that little bit of effort to kind of acknowledge what he's done around here.
Yeah.
All right. So the first couple of new business items were pretty straightforward. Licensing.
'Tis the season of annual renewals.
Yep. Yeah. And so just so people realize that you've got to do this on an annual basis to get your license renewal. There's a liquor license renewal, and there's a common vittler licenses that have to be done. And so you're going to see these come through. Honestly, this has come up in the past where there's an acknowledgement that if they've made it to this list, they should not be in arrears of public taxes, right, and anything due to the town, and they should be in good state. So, right. So by the time they get to this particular point, it should be a no-brainer, and usually it is.
So with the common vic, that does require the Board of Health to sign off beforehand. They've got to get their health permit. They have to check with the treasurer collector for their taxes.
Right.
Is there anything with the building department as well? I don't think on an annual basis.
No, I don't think so. I think it's usually assessors and tax collector for the most part, I think. And that they've obviously paid to the select board for the permit.
Right.
So that should be all pretty straightforward. And so I think that we can... That's all set. The next one is interesting. The next one was the East Trolley Pedestrian Bridge Project, right? That was the bid that was out there. So again, I encourage you when the tape comes out to watch the video, because it was interesting kind of what transpired, because this was a grant that was gotten by the Trails Committee, and and grants aren't easy. I mean, sometimes it's just a little bit of paperwork, but most of the time you're in competition with other trail committees and whatnot across the state, and you're trying, in this particular instance, to get a bid to get construction to kind of keep this trail open. And these bids are not cheap. These are, a lot of times, they're bridge reconstruction, and those projects are engineering involved. This particular bid was for almost $500,000, like 400 and some odd. And so first,
how do you know how much it was for?
Well, it's interesting because it wasn't written, and I'm going to show this real quick just so everybody knows. It wasn't really written over there exactly what it was for. This is kind of interesting because it's backwards, but it wasn't written exactly what the bid was for, which I think is an oversight, because this is not townspeople's money. This is the bid where it went out, they got awarded it. This money's going to go into the coffers of the town, but it's going to be on a line item for this particular project. So it's an acknowledgement to release it from when the town gets it, to release it for this project by the select board. And so this was a no-brainer that it should have been high-fiving everybody. The trail committee should have been there. They should have representation, and if they should have asked if anybody from the trail committee was there.
There was representation.
Yep, I know there was. They didn't ask about it, and they didn't get to speak, but they should have acknowledged the work.
And they didn't get a thank you or...
Right, they should have gotten an acknowledgement, how much work they did, a thank you for getting this project to apply for it, even if they didn't get it, just thanks for trying. And instead, they just voted to accept it. And then somebody in the audience asked how much it was, and what happened.
And I don't think we ever made a motion for something that was a bid, that the motion didn't include how much it was for and where it was coming from, where the money was coming from. So that it was, I mean, in the buzzword of transparency, you want to know, we approved this bid for this much money, and we're taking it out of this pocket.
Right.
Seems logical.
Seems like a logical thing to do. So I think there was an opportunity lost on a couple of fronts. One is to let everybody know that the town got this bid. They're going to have a new bridge that's associated with the trails. I mean, that's an awesome, awesome thing to do. And when it was asked, well, how much was it for? Because this should have been, I'm sorry, it was $500,000 almost. It was 400 and some odd.
Yeah.
Instead, the person who asked how much it was for got yelled at for shouting out. Even though a hand was raised, nobody was acknowledged by the chair, and that is a no-no. Obviously, we've learned that, right? And so that particular person just asked how much was it for, and the chair wasn't going to answer. The vice chair did kind of throw a little bit of an elbow and say, hey, and then went and got the number. And I think, to her credit, she did provide that number to everybody, which I thought was a good acquiescence, I guess, considering the palpation, the palpable temperament of what was going on at the meeting. So, I don't know. I can't really call it a positive, but it was, at least they did state what the bids were and who got it and how much it was for. Right. So that at least helped. Yep.
So before we go further, there was a comment asking if maybe we can have the chief on your show. So I did ask.
Yep.
I asked today, hoping against hope that he would have said yes, and that we could have announced tonight that we were going to have him on.
Right.
So our next meeting our next show is the 30th, which is his last day.
Right.
So his last day officially ends at midnight. He didn't want to come on. He's not sure he wants to come on anyway.
Yeah. Right.
But, it could be a show like Mr. Wales, where we don't talk politics. We just,
Yeah, no, that would be good.
Fun discussion.
I think people would like that.
Yeah.
And I could totally understand his apprehension, perhaps, especially especially now, and certainly for this episode, I didn't expect him to. But maybe in the future episodes, we'll certainly ask. I think because I think that would be good. It would be great to do that.
Yeah, and I was kind of thinking that maybe as part of our next episode, we could just have the chat open, and whoever wants to come in and say thanks, we'll just memorialize it that way, and we'll read them all. And
yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah.
All right. So that was the Trolley Pedestrian Bridge project. Pest management proposal for the town hall. It is what it is. They're trying to get rid of mice. If you live in Brimfield, you have a mouse probably, in your house at some point. In the older buildings, it's just almost impossible to keep them out. Yeah. So that's
The annex has a fieldstone foundation. There are holes in it.
Yep.
Mice can find those holes, and it's going to happen.
Yep, for sure. All right. Mass Local Cultural Council Program allocation. That was, again, that seemed it was a stipend of about $5,800 or something. That was just that they asked for. That was already on the budget.
It wasn't even asked for. It's so the Cultural Council, Mass Cultural Council, has an equation that works that goes through every town in the state.
Okay.
And they get an allocation.
Gotcha.
But obviously we use it every year, and it's a great thing, and the Cultural Council with these funds will contribute to, I think they do the Concerts on the Common, help fund those. And they do a number of things kind of behind the scenes. It's not very well publicized, but it is something that they do a good amount of cultural activities. I think they do some stuff with the school too, I want to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. Next item on the agenda, state ethics training. So I thought this was interesting because it almost seemed like it was a new thing, totally new thing when it was brought up. And in reality, you've had to do this since I've been on the board, and so I'm going back 6 years or so, a little bit over. You've had to get certified online. It was online. The state offers it. You, at the end of it, you print a certificate. You give that certificate. I want to say I used to give it to Carol when she was in the administrative assistant's position. I know maybe it should have gone to the town clerk, but it was on file in my record anyways. And so, and that's what everybody did at the time. So we've been doing that. This is a little bit of it sounds like it's a program that's all online. The database will be kept online, and each town has to agree to kind of buy into it and use that system or not. And if they don't, you have to make your own system, and so that doesn't make sense. So so doing it online is just it just makes the most sense. But I thought it was interesting that it just seemed like such a novel thing, and it isn't. It's the same. I'm sure it's the exact same course. I'm sure it's the same exact
it was always a goofy ending. So you go through this course, and at the end of every chapter you've got to take a quiz. If you fail the quiz, you've got to go back and take it again.
Right.
Until you get it right. So there is no real failing of the exam.
Right.
You just get to take it over and over again until you pass.
Yeah, I think the idea is that you do it, you go through, and you go back, you learn what you did was wrong, you learn from it, you figure out, okay, that's why I made a mistake or whatever, and you go back and you fix that, and then hopefully you come out all the smarter for knowing more, so that you don't just get one wrong and you have to make it 70%. You got to get them all right, and you got to figure out why you did what was wrong. You have to kind of do what was wrong. You have to figure out what was wrong.
Right. And the last part of it, which was really messed up, was you pass the course, it pops up a certificate on your screen, and you have to print it right away. And if you don't save it and print it, you lose it. Right. And there was no way to bring it back again. Right. You don't log in to do this.
Right.
You at the end of it, you type in your name and your position, and I think it did the date for you, but everything else was you fill it in, print it out, and you're out. So this will hopefully make it, it
sounded like you could go in for any public position where go in and see if they've done it. It sounded like they were. There was accessibility by the public to go in and see, like a license. If you want to go and look at somebody's license, you can go in and see. And it sounded like this was going to be set up that exact same way, which I thought
that would be good.
Interesting, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's always good to have some ethical training.
Can never get enough.
You can never get enough ethical training. Developing performance reviews. This has been ongoing, and I thought, with the benchmarks and all that they were going to put this off until they got a little bit more squared away from the HR side of things, it sounded like. So I don't know if they're going to depend on that grant to find a way to get these performance reviews as like part of a package that they get, rather than have to redevelop the wheel and have to develop your own performance reviews. It's not hard to get at least something in an HR report, but
right.
I mean that's just commonsensical. That wasn't anything illustrious.
And that was in our plan to do, along with after the benchmark.
Right.
I was hoping to do this, do the benchmark first so that everyone is getting paid correctly, and then from there we can start developing performance reviews.
Right.
Where those that are really excelling at their positions can hopefully get more than the standard 2%.
The other thing too is that I think the benchmarking was a way to kind of review what the actual job description was for our particular employees, because just because the benchmark is X, Y, and Z, our employees might be doing WYX or ABX or whatever. So they're doing, and then you got to figure out how how these performance evaluations would actually relate to that position as we have it in town. So there is a little bit of creativity that will have to be done at some point.
Yep.
All right. The historical committee to oversee and coordinate the decorations on the common. I mean, usually what's been done in the past is that each, some of the subsection committees would come to us us being the board, and ask, can they put signs on the common for the holidays, and then everything was kind of authorized by that. And last year, maybe it was a little bit helter-skelter, maybe, I don't know. I can't remember last week, never mind last year.
Yeah, so it's one of those things. I don't think that it was really in my taste, but it was done, the Brimfield, I think, community partnership did it, which to me are the young families primarily, and I didn't see them do it. I would assume that they had a bunch of kids out there helping, and and if the kids want to decorate the common, let them.
Right. Well, I'm assuming that this is going to be the same thing. Like the people that want to do it will just come to the historic, and go to them and say, hey, can we do this on this day? We're going to put signs up and everything. And they say, well, what are you going to put up? What kind of signs? And just make it so that, obviously you get into a slippery slope if you start saying you can't put up a sign. So when you let somebody else in. So it'll be interesting to see how they do it. They didn't really say what the standard operating procedure was going to be. I would suggest that anybody with a desire to decorate the common should approach and get on the next historic meeting, the historical commission meeting. I think sooner rather than later. There's not much time. I don't know how often they meet. Really, I can't remember.
Once a month.
Yeah. And so, and I don't know how much they can do with just an email if they're a committee who's voting on this.
Right.
Right. And so there are some logistical questions that just need to be answered, and I'm not sure if how or when that's going to get done.
Yeah, it's getting short now, and if you haven't already done it, they may have missed the boat. And to me, it's just one more thing that the select board is pushing off to somebody else. Instead of when we were on the board, we would do all this stuff ourselves. and we would review all this, and this board just seems to be very happy to say, oh, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. I'll sit and watch.
Right.
And it's really becoming more and more of a do-nothing board that micromanages at the end.
Well, and then, there are these questions. I really do have a question on how they're going to meet with groups as a historical commission. They need to vote on it.
Yeah.
And so they're going to have to either have special meetings or, I just don't know how they plan to do it.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. We could skip the next thing on the agenda. Actually, no. The next thing on the agenda was a discussion, and I'm going to read it because this is exactly what it said.
Discussion.
A discussion of legal costs associated with an open meeting law violation complaint in the amount of $2,442. And when it was read as an item, the chair explicitly mentioned my name as being related to this.
The cause of this $2,442 bill.
For the record, I did have my hand up, and there was no discussion. But
it says discussion.
It does say discussion. They didn't even discuss it. And I'm going to tell you right now, they may have gotten a $2,000 bill, but the reality was what I did, I thought was legit. And I know they said that this complaint was unmeritorious and had no backing, and everything that's ever been done has been untrue or whatever. They were found that it had no bearing on what they were doing or whatnot. And I'm going to tell you straight up, this hasn't been settled yet. And so for them to say that nothing's come of this, perhaps nothing will come of it. And I'm not saying it's going to, but I've not gotten a letter saying that, this is all just hogwash and it was all just had no merit to it and don't bother us again. I've not gotten that reply yet. So
wait, a reply that would look like this on the second screen?
Let's see if I can get this.
Let me see, because I believe what was said was there have been no merit to any of these, right?
That's what it said. So let me get this up. I'm trying to get it bigger. So that's what I'm...
So this is taken from one of the open meeting violations that I did and that the select board reviewed, said had no merit. And I then rebutted it. And the way you do it is you send an open meeting violation or open meeting law complaint to the board that you feel violated the open meeting laws. They then discuss it and come up with what they want to do. And then they write you a letter back.
Right.
And if you don't like their response, you can send it on to...
First up, who's they? Who writes the letter back?
The board that you feel...
Yes.
Violated the open meeting law.
Right. So you send it to the board and you send it to the clerk so there's a documentation of it. Right. And then they offer you a reply. Usually, do they write it or who wrote?
It was the administrative assistant.
Yeah, the administrative assistant. Mine, I got a letter from the attorney.
Right.
And so somebody makes a reply and then that goes to the complainant and then it goes to the Attorney General's office of the open meeting law.
Right.
They've got an office for that.
Yeah.
And then they offer, well, you get a copy of that, and then if you don't like that particular reply, the person can rebut. And so you send in what's called a rebuttal, and that goes back and then back to the Attorney General's office.
And the Attorney General then reviews all the information, may do follow-up with you, and then come up with their findings.
Right.
So the findings on this one that we showed was that we, the Attorney General, resolve this complaint by informal action in accordance with Mass General Law and find that the board, the select board, violated the open meeting law as alleged. So unlike what was said last night, there is one. There's another email over here.
All right. I'll come back to that.
So if you do a Google search for Massachusetts open meeting law complaints, you can find a bunch of information, and you can see resolved cases, and you can search by town, and you will find the whole letter that I was referring to just then. You'll also find this one against the ZBA. And this one, again, Zoning Board of Appeals, we find that board violated open meeting law when a quorum of board deliberated outside of a properly noticed public meeting. And then there are actually two allegations. We find that the board did not otherwise violate the open meeting law. So part of that was substantiated, part of it was unsubstantiated, according to the Attorney General.
Right.
So that's that one. There's another one here. So this one came from minutes of a meeting.
Put it on. You ready?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry.
And this one, again, it was Ms. Collins who said during the meeting last night that none of these allegations were substantiated.
Right.
Well, here is the rebuttal the response back from the select board, which said, I forget now if this was from the reply from the select board or from the minutes, because there were two of them.
Yeah.
Either way, this was an open meeting violation that I put in, and at the meeting the complaint was reviewed, at which time Board of Selectmen Chair Suzanne Collins took full accountability of the violation. Ms. Collins concurred that a violation had taken place and publicly apologized.
Right.
So for her to say in a public meeting that none of these have been substantiated, I just showed you three different responses that were substantiated.
And I think it needs to be emphasized. This all stems from the lack of communication. I can tell you right now that as chair for a couple of years and on the board for 6, there is no doubt that we had done stuff wrong. There's no doubt. I mean, I remember having to undo a vote and kind of, but absolutely no doubt. Usually we ask a question, and at the time, for my stint anyways, Carol was the administrative assistant. She usually had the answer, and Bob was almost always there. He's probably there maybe 60-70% of the time at the meeting. And if you had a question, he would come up and say, you got to do this, you got to do that. I'm like, oh, okay, we'll back up a little. Bob Sullivan, the town clerk. So we asked, and sometimes it was somebody in the audience, if a question about the assessors, somebody in the audience would say, I can comment on that. I will say that this is what you need to do, and this is why you need to do it. And that avoided a lot of the issues. Listening to people that say, hey, wait, don't talk about that, or hey, wait, maybe we shouldn't talk about this, that just doesn't happen now. And so there's no mechanism to say, we'll put the brakes on, let's back up a little bit. Instead, you raise your hand and you get yelled at, or you get escorted out, or something along that line. So I think a lot of it is not knowing all the intricacies about running a meeting. And I get it, because you learn on the fly.
It's tough.
And not allowing yourself to be taught, I think, is the key point. Not acknowledging that you don't know everything and that you may be making a mistake. And I think we have tried to point that out, I don't know how many occasions. And the reality is, nobody will allow us to talk. So the only way we can the only way that we can get our hands up and get listened to is by this. What I thought, the complaint that I put in, and there's another one that's going to be on the next item in a second. I thought they were wrong. I legitimately thought they were wrong, and I still do. And I don't know what the Attorney General is going to say, and they may say technically not, or they may say, I don't know. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what they say. But it wasn't just sent back to me saying, yeah, this is thrown away. And I want that to be extremely clear. What they said at the meeting last night was absolutely a lie. and was wrong. They shouldn't have just dismissed them because they've not been for naught. There have been a couple of reasons, as Mike just showed you, that things happen. And the reality is what they should do is say, all right, we get it. That was wrong. Let's not do that anymore. And instead, we see this tactic of just shouting out everybody who has an opinion. And it's just not been, and it's not effective, and it's not right. And honestly, I don't know what else to do except do something through this mechanism.
It's, I don't like submitting open meeting violations any more than they like receiving them.
No. It takes time. It takes time. It takes energy. It's negative, and it just doesn't feel right. Agree. But you go to these meetings, you have something important to say, you get shut down. Right. Right. You listen to these select board members just not tell the facts. How can somebody say none of these have amounted to anything? I'm very glad that none of this has amounted to fines for the town. Right. And I hope they don't have, we don't get fined. Right. But at the same time, there are processes set in place. There's Mr. Adams loves to talk about out of the box thinking. Well, in a municipal setting, I know I haven't gotten a text from him, but I know he's hitting the table. Yeah. We'll fix that. I'm gonna change the microphone location, but I can't do it right now. Keep it far away from me. Yes, exactly. Yeah. But Mr. Adams likes to say that he likes to think out of the box. That's fine to think out of the box, but you also have to know when to be in the box. And in a municipal setting, there's certain things you have to do. Right. And that includes how you run a meeting. Right. And when you're talking about approving a grant or a bid that's almost $500,000, you should probably put in that motion how much it is and where that money is coming from. Right. Even if it isn't to pat the guy on the back who got you the money. Right. It's common sense to say, we need to let this, we're talking about a large bid. We need to let people know how much and where. Right. I mean, you want to make it so that one of the reasons we even started this broadcast is to try to explain what just happened because it gets kind of ambiguous sometimes. Things get voted on and you look around and you say, what just happened? And, town meeting's the same way. If you don't pay attention, you don't know what you're voting on sometimes. I mean, it goes that fast. And so with this, I think there are a lot of people that now kind of attend these meetings that don't necessarily know what all these are about. And I think it's the obligation of the select board to educate them and make it so that they're participatory. And there is a question here that says, should the board be explaining what they are signing during the meetings? Do the public understands what actions are being taken? In my opinion, I think that when we were on the board, we always tried to do that because it is, and the reason why we're doing the show is like Paul said, we want to help people understand what's going on. Hopefully someone listening is going to be a next selectman. Right. And we want people to be prepared for what's happening. Right. And I think, a big difference between what the boards that Paul and I were on and the current board feels is I always considered this a public meeting. A select board meeting was a public meeting. And we tried to educate people. We tried to listen to as many people as we could, and sometimes we couldn't. Sometimes we didn't, but for the most part, we wanted it to be participatory because it's a public meeting where public officials, like the sheriff said when he came over. Mm-hmm. Right. He's an elected official and he wants every resident that has a question, he wants to answer that question for those residents. And that's the way that I always looked at it. Last night, you heard Mr. Adams say this is a business meeting. It's, it's not for the public or something to that effect. Right. Well, and Ms. Collins has said that on many an occasion. This is a business meeting. It's a business meeting.
Yeah,
and
we shouldn't be interrupted.
Business gets done, but it's not just a business meeting. It's a lot more than that.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. The next one is another open meeting law complaint, and I dated it November 4th, but that's not when it happened. That's just when I submitted it. It was the October 11th meeting, and I would encourage anybody who hasn't seen it or who wasn't there at the October 11th meeting to watch that on demand. That was an abomination of a meeting, and I just couldn't sit back, to be honest. So that one, it is.
What was that about?
It was an executive, actually there were multiple executive sessions in that particular meeting, I believe, but it was an executive session with the administrative assistant, and that related to an executive session that was held on September 12th. So it got busy quick, let's just say that. There was a lot that went on that should never have gone on. And, I'm not going to take any sort of support. I don't feign support for any particular member of the sitting board right now when I say this, but I think Mr. Soto it should never have happened. It should never have happened the way it happened. I'm not saying that what happened shouldn't have been said. It just should probably not have been said in that setting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think he was set up.
Yeah. I think so.
And it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
I think part of that, and even last night you saw it where, which I guess we're coming up to. I'll jump to that with the Hampden County Sheriff's presentation.
Right.
At that public information session for the select board, I believe it was stated somewhere that they would have a public hearing about it so that the residents could ask questions.
Right, because there was just so much going on. They wanted to know.
Yeah.
I agree.
And the board wanted to move on, which they should have. It was a long presentation, and they did have business to take care of beyond this. So I understand cutting it short, but they did say that there would be a public hearing, public information session when more residents could ask all the questions they wanted to.
Right.
But then last night they brought this thing up, and they just, said, no, we don't think the select board should do this. We shouldn't sponsor it. We're not for it. Right.
I thought that was a huge mistake for the, again, it's a repetitive thing, but I thought it was a lack of respect for the presentation and for the people. The town should support the sheriff coming in, having a public hearing, because I think the town should have it. It doesn't mean that the select board has to support the message of the hearing, but now that can is open. And so it's been mentioned, and people want to know what they're talking about, and to all of a sudden say, oh, now we don't want anything to do with this.
Right.
When in reality, I'm sorry, but a lot happened in the last 6 months, 8 months, and you do have responsibility to what's going on. It's because of this upheaval and question mark related to the police department that this even became an issue. So, you own it.
A year and a half ago.
Right. You own the way this has kind of transpired. And I think I think there's an obligation to the town to have a public hearing and maybe go over some of the things that are still somewhat nebulous in people's minds. The sheriff came in with a proposal, but it's not the only proposal he stated. He said that he could do whatever they want, but this is what we decided to come with because they had a limited time. Well, they never talked about other proposals that might be more palatable, or even a relationship that might be more palatable. And so they should have a town-sponsored public hearing.
Right.
And then would let all the police officers that were at that select board meeting and residents be able to talk. At that meeting, for some reason, if you had a badge, you could talk.
Or had a badge at any point in your life.
Any point in your life, you could talk. I mean, for this kind of I get it. They know what's going on. They are perhaps a specialized resource, and they know what's going on, from that side of things. But the reality is that was a public meeting. To say only people with a badge can talk is insulting, and that was absolutely wrong. And the only way to get over that, and I get it, for time they wanted to kind of get a lot of that out, they need to have a public hearing that you don't need a badge to come to the microphone.
Right. And I mean, no offense to the amazing officers. It was amazing to me.
The turnout was outstanding.
How many state troopers, other police officers from other towns, and just
our own
dedicated.
Police,
yeah. I mean, how many people there were in our town. But I don't think too many of them asking questions knew our police department well and the functions that we do day in, day out.
And I also wonder, I mean, I guess it's probably a close-knit group. They probably know what's been going on.
That's true.
By talking, so they may have had kind of an idea of what was going on, but I'm not sure if they really know what was going on in the last year or so in our police department. So, yeah, I mean, they do. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about the reform bill. I learned a lot about the corrections officers and the Hampden County Sheriff Deputization Program. I also learned about how these official entities work together and sometimes don't work together. I mean,
right.
The reality is, it's an interesting dynamic, and I do think that we need to know more about it. I don't know if there's an avenue to help the town or not. I think everybody wants their own police department, or most people want their own local police department. But I also think that there are things, especially centered around the reform bill, that will challenge rural communities to have their own police department as a part-time unit.
Right.
That's just the way it is. If you don't know about it, we could do a segment on it. Maybe we could have somebody come in and explain it a little bit more. But the reality is the training that needs to get done. If you have part-time police officers, these rural towns aren't going to be able to pay for that level of training. It's got to be shared somehow. It's got to be figured out.
Yeah. And I will say, one more time that I've heard that, some people are blaming us, and Facebook for blowing this thing out of proportion.
Really?
Oh yeah.
That's crap.
And I'll tell you why it's crap. Because the brass from C Troop, the top members of C Troop, were at that meeting. They don't follow Brimfield Matters. Right. They don't follow Brimfield Community.
Right.
It is a close-knit police community out there. And the state troopers were there because they were concerned with what was going on and they're interested. Right. And not only that, but a lot of the rural towns in Hampden County and around the state are now looking at Brimfield wondering what we're going to do, because this is setting a precedent that is going to could potentially bring, and I will say I don't think it is going to happen. I do think that the select board is against it. I am almost certain that most of the residents are against it. Right. So I don't see this thing taking off at all. But because they're not allowing for the public discussion and the public rebuke, if that's what's going to happen, there hasn't been enough communication to settle this. The management style has not been there to quench this or squelch this or whatever it is. Right. This issue.
I agree. No, I think it opened up a lot, and I think the opportunity to have this as a public hearing it's got to happen, to be honest, and it should happen.
Yes.
Because I think a lot of things just need to be clarified. And that would also be an opportunity for the police chief search committee to maybe update us on how things are going. That should be an agenda item. That should be an agenda item all the time from here on out. Because I think that's an important thing that we should be updated on. You know, we don't need specifics all the time, but we need to know that things are happening, that there's an interview process going on, who's participating in that. Yeah. I mean, I think that would be. I can't tell you what that is.
It'll go off too.
No, it's my. Anyhow, I'm just very busy. You're just very busy.
Very busy. Yes.
But so that's the Hamden Sheriff's. I don't think. But again, Mr. Soto saying, "I'll pay for it. I'll get a venue to have it. And that's he shouldn't back down. I think this is a town question. I think it should be a town authorized, if not supported, public hearing. I mean, to get this information out there, and that would be the way to control it, and maybe be a little bit ahead of it before. And control it at that level. Someone's got to control it, at the hearing level.
Yep.
And know what questions to ask and whatnot. But
so there are a couple of questions. So the first one was, which one was I looking at? Oh, now I didn't know which one I was going to answer. But has the committee even met? We have not heard a thing. I have requested, doesn't mean that I'll receive, but I have requested.
Which committee? The chief search?
This is the chief search committee.
Yeah.
I've requested to be notified whenever there is a meeting about that, because I am very interested. I would like to go to all those meetings, which should be public.
Mm-hmm.
I have not heard a word. And, from what I've heard, they have not met.
Well, they should have all been at that Hamden County, because they needed to hear that. They needed to hear, this is, I mean, even a few of them, just to bring it back to the group at a meeting, liaison, if you will, they should have been at that meeting to be active, to kind of learn from, all right, this is what we're starting on. You have to address this now. That elephant's out. I mean, it's in the room. You've got to address it in your search committee, and you've got to address it with whatever people put their hats in the ring in an interview process, and say, how do you feel about this? This is going on. If you become a police chief, what do you think we should do? And that's an interesting thing. I mean, we know of at least one person who didn't put their application in just because of this upheaval.
Yeah, well, all the politics in town.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So the other thing that I was going to say is, Michelle said, Mr. Soto should know he does not have to pay for it. A public hearing can happen in any town-owned building. An interesting thing that I saw, and maybe Michelle can even answer this, is that as the Hamden County Sheriff, I believe he, Sheriff Cochee could go into the elementary school himself and request the use of the elementary school for a meeting without interaction of any select board member.
Right.
Because looking at the application, I thought that he might have been one of those authorized requesters.
Yeah, I mean, talking to him, it sounds like he thinks he can anyways, and he probably can. And my point, I think, is that it's got to be controlled. Somebody needs to be the one that invites him, and they need to control the tempo. Yeah. And where that meeting goes, to be honest.
Maybe Brimfield Matters could request it.
There you go. That's actually not a bad idea. Yeah, I'd be more than happy to kind of, yeah. We'll see if we're asked. We'll see.
Okay.
But, all right. Anything else?
Michelle says, I believe I am correct. That
you are correct.
I am.
Impressive.
Yes. Hey, every once in a while.
Yeah. There you go. We'll give you that.
Twice a day the broken clock is.
There you go. Exactly right. Go back to the agenda. We got the social media policy, which I don't know. I mean, You need it. You need it for your personnel. At this stage of the game, you need it. Personnel, social policies, social media policies. We've gone through this. I did get like 4 different versions way back when we were kind of dealing with this personnel policy handbook. It is hard, putting it together is pretty easy. It's hard to make it do what you want it to do, and you got to be careful on what you want it to do. The reality is you can't control someone's ability to talk freely, but there is a line to cross, and it's very clear that there are lines that can be crossed and can't be crossed. And however, determining where that line is not easy. And the lawyers will tell you straight up, you can have all you want in a social media policy, and it's got to be egregious most of the time. It's got to be over the top before you can actually take action on it. But it is important to have one. Yeah,
my fear is that I don't know of any department head that was in on reviewing this for Brimfield.
No.
Which, making any personnel decisions without your department heads, at least your department head input. Maybe they're not voting members.
Right.
But they should have input because they know their people.
Again, this goes back to that communication thing I said earlier. You can show them something, they'll say, oh, well, what about this? We have a Facebook page. Wait, I didn't think about that. It doesn't mean you can't post. It means you know what I mean? It can poke holes in it from the get-go and learn from it. The other big question I have is I don't know who our lawyers are right now. I don't know who our town lawyers are, and maybe I can contact Teresa, and she might be able to tell me. But they hired a new firm 2 weeks ago, a little over 2 weeks ago now, and so we had a law firm that kind of participated in making a policy, personnel policy. Sorry, and they had been working on a lot of that. And so, is all that going to be just gone? And then you just start off with
with new eyes.
This is what I found from a particular town, and I want to use it, kind of
Amherst.
thing. Yeah, maybe somewhere else. Who knows?
Yeah,
but I think it's I don't know. I mean, this needs to be. It'd be nice to see it.
So, questions: did they discuss the social media policy? What do they want to do? Did they discuss where they are with the policy?
It's a good point. Like, you mean as a group? Did they discuss it?
Oh,
as a select board.
Yeah.
When did they discuss it, and who discussed it?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they didn't do it as a group, and the reality is they should make that available and discuss it at the table.
Yeah,
it would be nice for them to read it and then discuss it amongst themselves, and then that's an open meeting. You're doing it legit. Even copy it and pass it out to everybody that's there, or have a display like we can do with the open meeting with the social media policy available to see it. We used to do that when we had Teams, when we had electronic devices. I could post what we were talking about, not for the people that were in the hall, unfortunately, but I could do it for those people that were watching on their phone or on a computer that had that technology. And so it was a start. It was something. I don't know. I mean, so somebody wrote it, they emailed it to everybody. When they say, have you had a chance to read it? Half of the people were looking through papers. I don't know if they've had a chance to read it, or if they just got it in a packet that night.
Yeah.
I mean, how inefficient.
So when we did the personnel policy 2 years ago, there were two select board members involved. So there wasn't a quorum of select board.
Right.
And then we worked with a group of department heads, and we went through page by page,
right,
everything that was said. We took down notes of what changes we thought should happen. We then sent all those notes and all those comments off to the attorney. The attorney reviewed it, came back, we went through again, approved or denied the attorney comments. We didn't deny many.
Right.
And then with that draft, we sent that out to the select board, and I mean, we tabled that for months because people hadn't read through it.
Right.
And we read through it. So this all happened in this meeting.
Right.
who knows if they didn't discuss it with the department heads,
right?
And they didn't, and I'm assuming they didn't check with the town council because we're in between.
Right.
Was it just something that got pushed through? And as for, did they discuss it? Not much.
We don't know.
Did they pass anything? Yes, they did. We now have a social media policy that has been approved by the select board and is going to be in, what is it?
January.
Yeah, in effect.
In effect on
January
1st, yeah, as part of the personnel policy handbook or manual or whatever. So it'd be nice to see it. Eventually we'll see it. And when we get it, and we'll post it so that everybody can see it.
I have requested it.
Okay, nice. I don't think we should have to request it like Freedom of Information Act kind of thing. We should just...
And that's... I didn't. Yeah, it was just hey, when you get a chance, could you send me a copy?
Yeah, good. Yeah, that would be... Hopefully you'll get it and not get charged for it. All right, so social media policy, we talked about the... All right, building committee. Touch on that? This is the last thing. So
Management 101.
Right.
And maybe it's not even Management 101, just...
Take this off for a second.
I'm just... a
lot of people don't know what transpired over the last week. You want to bring them up to date?
Okay.
So that might be a good start because a lot of people just don't know.
So the building committee, so at the last meeting, there was a motion upon an amendment, which then got, totally redone. And basically the motion that was provided, and actually I wonder if it probably hasn't made that. No, it hasn't. The motion that was formally made at last week's meeting or 2 weeks ago meeting,
right,
was that the existing board will stay in effect and will do this and that and all this stuff. So building committee was excited. They get to live another day.
Right.
But then the next day they realized what they did and came up, made Teresa write an email to the building committee saying, nope, that vote should never have happened because you are already disbanded as of November 1st per the
a previous vote,
August vote.
Right.
So, and mind you, we've got 11 members on this committee, and the 11 members include 6 department heads, one that's retiring at the end of this month, but 6 hardworking department heads who have done nothing on company time for this.
Right.
They have, so they bust their butt every day, 9 to 5 for us. In the case of, police, fire, and highway, right through the night if they need to. And they make time to do the building committee to help out the town.
Right.
You also have a number of very good residents that have been involved for over 10 years on many, many different building committees.
Right.
So you're basically sending these people through a roller coaster of emotions, saying you're back on, you're off, you're on, you're off, you're
right.
We're gonna keep you, thank you, but we're gonna dismantle the committee anyway.
Right.
So all of the morale of that board, I can't imagine wanting to continue at this point.
Well, it was ridiculous when if anybody remembers, the way it was brought up is like, the section heads, the department heads were, there was a perceived impropriety of their being on this board. Anybody who's ever gone to those meetings knows that each department gave up more than they asked for to try to get something passed. I mean, they really didn't say, well, we want this, we need more space, we need that, you guys don't need that. And they just didn't do that. In fact, everybody knew that there were concessions to be made, and they did it. It was to think that there is a perceived, I don't know, like a perception that they would
conflict of interest.
That's what they called it, a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
To be on a committee that you're going to be working on, to call that a conflict, that's a stretch. It's a stretch. And it's only perceived by the people who want it to be perceived. And it had nothing to do with the reality of their meetings, and it had nothing to do with the reality of those individuals involved. Because I've been to those meetings, and I've seen the result of it. And it was impressive. And that was just, honestly, you're just throwing out individuals that could absolutely be helpful in this endeavor.
So at this last building committee, which happened the day after, so it was the Tuesday after the Monday meeting, or Tuesday after the Wednesday meeting, or whatever it was.
Right.
They met, even though they weren't sure what was going to happen, and they wanted to all move forward. At one point, they were talking about the library, and the library has a grant. They won a grant,
right,
to do some architectural plans and figure out how to make that more ADA accessible.
Right.
And the committee kind of said, you should go forward. You can do this on your own. You don't need us. And the librarian, the head librarian, one of the 6 department heads, said, who has lived in a beautiful, cute library that has been woefully inadequate for ADA access.
Right.
And to help to make sure that we stay out of trouble,
right,
she has been doing a lot of extra work. If somebody who's disabled comes in,
right,
she has her librarians run and get everything that's needed. Before the door was there and the parking lot was there, so that everyone knows, the library 4 years ago was inaccessible.
Right.
Then we were able to, through Norcross funds,
mm-hmm,
put in a parking lot in the back of it,
right,
that allowed access, and it was a handicapped accessible. And I forget if it was before or after that, but kind of in tandem with that,
mm-hmm,
the library got a grant to do ADA accessible doors. So they changed the doors. So now within the past 4 years, we can now get someone who's disabled into the library, into the Sherman room.
right.
The next hurdle is get them up onto the main level and get an ADA accessible bathroom. And it's going to take a lot more than just simply waving your wand and doing that. And I won't get into all that.
Right.
But so she has a grant that would allow her to get the plans in place. She doesn't want to do that and spend any money on the library that might endanger a larger project of the town hall and annex, which she feels is a higher importance.
Right.
So right there, right, you have a department head,
right,
who could have gone forward, who could have made her department better, but understands that the annex is probably in more dire straits than her building. So she's willing to wait with her money it won't expire.
Right.
So there's your conflict.
Right.
Absolutely none.
Yeah. No. Again, you have these people that, well, one, they know the needs of the town, and they know the needs of the individual departments. And now, having worked together for so long, they know the needs of the other departments.
Right.
And I think everybody has an idea of what, the safety complex gave up to get that project done. They know what they gave up. And so no one's going in there thinking that they're just going to throw, I'm going to throw this out on the table and I'm going to get it just because it's my department and I'm going to put my foot down and not vote on anything else. To me, it makes no sense.
Right.
It makes no sense. But I thought it was an interesting thing on this particular agenda is that was an item that was added at the last minute. That was that item is supposed to be a standing agenda item per one of the sitting board members. They asked, that will be an agenda item forever, basically on there forever until things get done. And they had to revise the agenda to add that on there. And they didn't mention anything. Well, I mean, I guess they did mention about the other. They kind of just said basically they got one person from the previous building committee that had written an email or a letter requesting to be on this one. I think that's what they said.
They said they had 3 applicants.
3 applicants, one from the, I think he said only one from the old standing committee. And so I don't know how true that is, but again, what do you expect? I mean, what would you expect if you kind of just got slapped around a bit out back behind the barn, and all of a sudden now you gotta, now you gotta be asked, oh, if you want to join again, you gotta go back in line and sign up and join again and get your marching orders about what we want you to do. Hello, no,
but they didn't make any firm decision. Again, management with this should probably have said something to the effect of, you guys are all on, or you guys are all off.
Right.
When they had their meeting, before the building committee had their meeting, one of the co-chairs spoke with the chairman of the board of selectmen, and at the meeting he said, the building committee co-chair said that select board chairman said he wasn't sure if it existed. He wasn't sure if it was a legal meeting.
Right.
How can you drag a board over a month, over 2 months probably now, through all this and not know if they're in existence or not? Right. Just make up your mind and move forward.
There have been talk in both directions. I mean, that there is legal support that it doesn't exist anymore, and then on the other hand, just show us a letter. Show us what we're trying to deal with from a legal, to decipher whether or not that board or committee exists or not. It shouldn't be that hard. You just say, I'm sorry, but the way we read it and the way the lawyers read it, this is what it is. We want to start fresh and give everybody opportunity to kind of restart on a new committee. Okay, that would have been better. Right now, this has just been hashed around like everybody thinks they know exactly what's going on, and the reality is the fact that they're not explaining it tells me they don't know what's going on. If they can't explain it that clear from a legal standpoint, they don't know what's going on.
Yeah, and they haven't made that step, so they kicked it again down the curb till next time.
Right.
And what's going to happen next time?
Right. I don't know. So. Oh boy, that was a lot. All right. Well, what time we got? Not too bad. We went over a little bit of time. So we kind of figuring for an hour. We went over a little bit, but I think that's all that was on the agenda. Did you have anything else? I know we have a couple of things that we want to.
Yeah. So I think, on the Facebook ad, we had a couple of different things. We talked about the police chief. We talked about the open meeting law. We talked about the building committee, dragging our department heads through the mud with the building committee, transparency. I think hopefully people can see that this board is about as transparent as a mud puddle.
There you go.
The cessation of tolling the memorial bell for veterans and town volunteers. Right. This hits me hard.
Yeah. Yep. Sorry, I almost forgot about that.
That's okay. And I think we've covered this before anyway.
Yeah,
but it's just one of those. Veterans Day came and went 11 days ago, and it was sad to not hear that bell, and I take it personally because, I was Quasimodo for a year or two.
Yeah. No, it was nice. And most people, I think, reached out, especially if they had a personal reason why, they definitely reached out and they appreciated it, I think.
This to me,
it was nice.
This kind of goes back to what I was trying to relay, and I don't think I got because I go off on tangents
a little bit.
Yeah,
a little bit. That's what it's about. We can come back. We have other episodes, so we'll always come back.
But it's like I honestly feel that this board sometimes acts in ways that just pushes somebody who they feel is an adversary down,
right,
instead of pushing the town forward.
Right.
And they would rather spend some time pushing adversaries down.
Right.
And I think that's what they did with Anthony, and with this sheriff's thing. It's they are so quick to just kind of say, this is him.
Right.
I'm not in favor of it. It's all him. Instead of trying to clarify,
right,
and calm the town and surrounding towns and the state police. There are many people upset about all this.
Right.
And all they're doing is spending their time saying it's him.
Right.
Yeah. And, same thing with this bell. I think it's, something that we started with Michelle and others.
Right.
And because of that, oh no, it's a hazard.
Right.
We got to stop this.
Right.
And it was something that brought the town for a board who wanted to unify this town and say that community matters. They, in my opinion, haven't shown any of that.
No.
And that just really saddens me. And the Memorial Bell, I think, is among the larger displays of
right,
of the fracturing.
It's and I don't know how to say it. It's a simple thing that meant so much that
to the community
that why just kind of just line item and just veto it and just get rid of it. I don't understand it. I mean, there could have been another way of resurrecting it, have somebody else. They could have worked to make it continue. There are a number of ways it could have worked, but to not even try and just say, and to make up stories like, oh, it's unsafe. You've had that.
Yeah.
I don't want to go there. We've already had that discussion with people that know better than they.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
All right.
So I think that's about all that I have.
All right. Let me just kind of recap a few things here then. And I don't have the... I got to get this. So there is a vaccination and booster clinic, and that is 10 to 1 on Thursday, December 15th. And that is 20 Main Street in Brimfield. And there are...
20 Main Street, I believe, is the church.
Is the senior center. Yeah, they're doing it at the senior center. Sorry. And so there's information there. There's information on Facebook about it as well. There is... I don't have... Is there a $75 gift certificate?
Yes. Yes, I heard that there's a $75 gift certificate for every person that shows up.
Nice. Yeah. And
I believe that's still in place.
So bring your... ideally, bring your ID card, an ID, your medical card, your vaccination card. That just makes things a little bit easier, but they're not going to turn anybody away from what I heard. So that is a great thing. That's... we have to thank the senior center, I'm sure, for orchestrating that.
Yeah, I think it's a, thing
Board
between Board of Health, senior center for sure, and it might be even the regional senior centers or Mass Health. I'm not sure which one.
Okay. All right, so that's up there now. We've got that. Do you remember that specific date for that other thing?
I don't.
All right, let me just go ahead and put this up real quick. Again, the National Wreaths Across America Day, December 17th. Brimfield Cemetery will begin at 11:30. The wreaths will be placed at noontime. And so we'll put the contact information. It's been out there a few times. You can go online and find it. You could also see it. I'll leave it up on the screen for a couple seconds here while we talk about that.
And I will say that congratulations to Brimfield once again. When we had Manda on, I think she said there were, was it 50? We needed 50 more sponsorships.
Yep.
After a lot of hard work from Manda.
Yep.
And everybody else, Zach and I believe Kay Kaprowski was in on some of this and a bunch of people. And I'd like to think that our Brimfield Matters community also helped out. they ended up getting enough sponsorships for this year, and they went into next year. So
nice.
So they've got a surplus.
Outstanding. Which
is outstanding. Great job to Amanda and everybody else that participated.
Great. The next thing I wanted to put up there is a reminder that the Sunday, December 4th will be the traditional Brimfield tree lighting. And so they're going to have hot chocolate, holiday treats, music, holiday cheer, and a visit from Santa. And
has that been run by Historical, though?
Actually, I can guarantee it is not, to be honest. Do we want to go there? I mean, I do not. No, I think Santa set this up last year.
That's true.
And there's nobody that's
Santa supersedes
any historic.
Select board, historical.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that was probably, I think that may be the last thing that I had. Again, this was a short time between the meeting and some of the stuff I put together. Usually in a couple of nights after the meeting, and I'll try to do better. We're going to try to have the commercials a little bit fixed, a little bit better narrated, because so I can read it better ahead of time. We're going to try a few things.
I think we should try the screen on screen thing where they can see the ad, but also see your face.
See me doing this?
Yeah.
You know what? You're not very nice. Not very nice at all.
Oh, the 10th annual Trot with Ted.
Oh, I saw that today too.
November 27th, sign up at 8 a.m.
Right.
That's a 5K race?
I think it's a 5K, and it's at the high school. It starts at the high school, and that's for the education. It raises money for Tintasco education. So that's a good one.
Yeah, on Thanksgiving, if there's 5, it better be preceded or post-seeded with turkeys for me.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe stuffings.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I'm not going to be on the 5K race.
No. But no, neither will I, actually. No, my racing days is over, I'm afraid.
Yep.
So our next episode is scheduled for November 30th, and that would be our 15th episode. So we're kind of excited about that. I don't think I have that queued up, so I won't do that, the goodbye thing. But I will do that next time. I know it's going to be a recording. I know, but that's okay. So anyhow, we'd like to wish everybody a
happy Thanksgiving.
Very happy Thanksgiving with your family, and hopefully nothing but fun and good tidings and good meals and good feelings, and hopefully we'll have something better to talk about next time, something a little bit more positive. But I honestly, what the town is doing, despite everything that the town is doing, it's really been great. It's been good, like the wreaths across and the tree lighting will be nice. I mean, there's a lot of positivity, and we got to stay that way. You got to stay positive. So,
yep.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
All right. Happy Thanksgiving.